Dzień dobry, witamy w kolejnym wydaniu Kuriera Snookerowego, wydaniu bardzo specjalnym, bo i specjalny gość. U nas zawitał jeden z najlepszych i najbardziej docenianych trenerów snookera na świecie, Chris Henry. Przyjechał do Polski po ostatnich Mistrzostwach Świata, aby szkolić m.in. Mateusza Baranowskiego, a my z tej okazji skorzystamy, aby trochę z nim porozmawiać. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Michael. How are you? Good to meet you.
How's your coaching lately? What players are you working with right now?
It's actually very busy. I'm working with a number of top professional players, from Shaun Murphy, Mike Selby, Ding Junhui recently,
All right.
Ali Carter, Graham Dott, and quite a number of lower ranked players too.
So you're a pretty busy man. What things are you actually working on with them on improving? Any maybe specific examples?
Yeah, we work first of all on what we call competence. That's the ability to do something physically well. So on-table work, for example, the two keys to snooker, striking the cue ball where intended, and also aiming the cue ball where intended. So what's very important is the repetition that these guys are doing to make very good habits so they can do those two things without having to think too much about it. That's the first thing we work on. We have lots of different shot routines, and then also on the confidence side, so you've got competence and you've got confidence, we then work on the mental side. But I'm more a specialist in the subconscious, which is controlling your emotional states by habit and rewiring your brain to deal with things in a more calm way, because you need to stay calm. In any sport, you need to be calm, because that's when the habit controls the physical body in a very effective way. So mental state, emotional state is hugely important.
I'm talking about the mental state. Is there any player maybe that you find particularly challenging to coach?
On the mental side,
Yeah.
That's a good question, Michael. Some players tend to be better than other players mentally. Some players get a little bit too excited. Some players, for example, many years ago I worked with Peter Ebdon, and Peter went through a phase of when he potted a very important ball, you might see some kind of a reaction, come on, that kind of thing. Yeah. But that's not the best thing to be doing, because very quickly he had to recover for the next frame, and sometimes he couldn't come down quick enough to be able to recover to play at his best. So, people like Mike Selby are very strong mentally. Shaun Murphy is very strong mentally. Ding, great temperament. But I'm sort of working with these guys to help, let's say, expand their comfort zones so they feel more relaxed in these situations, and also increase their level of self-belief. Okay. Because if you genuinely believe it's possible to do what you're trying to do, there's more probability that you're going to be able to do it. And belief is created through repetition in your mind. So we work on that side as well.
Yeah. And you have helped a lot of players with your new tool that you developed.
Yes.
It's called the balls.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit what it's so special about the balls? Because it looks like a pretty simple tool to use.
Yeah, well, I can just very quickly show you. There's two balls basically. Now, this is a 17-gram ball. It's exactly the same size as a normal snooker ball, so it's 52.4 millimeters. But because it's so light, it gives you some very good feedback. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, one of the first things we're learning, teaching people to be able to learn is striking the cue ball exactly where intended. So in this scenario with this ball, it's all about learning to hit the middle of the ball when you want to. And many players can't do that because they're visually uncoordinated with their mechanics. So the mechanic has to be coordinated with the vision. So the two things are working together. So this is what we call a very tight tolerance. What's the Polish word for tolerance? Tolerancji? Tolerance?
Tolerancia.
Tolerancia. Okay, I'm getting better there. Tolerancia. This is a very small tolerance. So if you can habitualize, become very good at being effective with this ball, then this 143-gram ball...
It's wider tolerance, right?
This is a bigger, wider tolerance. So you get very good at this tight tolerance, and even if you fall out of this tight tolerance, you're still within the tolerance level for this ball. And that's why they're so effective. And that's why probably more than half of the world's tour players are now practicing with these balls. Many players are using this now.
We're talking about the pro players. We are at the Eurosport Poland channel, YouTube channel, and our commentary work. We are trying to encourage people to visit clubs and maybe start playing snooker by teaching some basics as well.
Yeah.
Is this tool maybe helpful for the beginners as well?
It is, and the reason that it is helpful is because, again, it's going to help players to develop some good habits right from the very start. So what we do with a beginner, maybe we can do an example. If you wanted to try a shot, Michael.
Sure.
With a professional, we would use a bit longer distances because it's more difficult. But for somebody who's, let's say, starting out playing, we use a shorter distance. So we can, let's say, help them to get some success early, so it encourages them. But if they're doing something wrong, it will very clearly show them what's happening.
And give you the feedback.
It will give you the feedback. So for example, we could place this ball here. Now, these balls are slightly weighted. There's a weight. And what you have to do is let it rock back. And once it rocks back, you can then place it into the correct position. And all I would ask you to do here, Michael, is if you could try with this cue here to hit that ball about medium speed. Imagine you're going to play a stun shot on a red for a black and hit that ball into the pocket.
All right, let's try it.
That would be the first request.
Okay.
So just hitting it into the pocket. Right, so what does that tell you? That tells you that you, with your technique and your vision, were able to strike that ball exactly in the middle.
Yeah, that looked easy.
That looked quite easy. So somebody at your level, you know, you're not a beginner, but a beginner might even struggle with that.
All right.
And we would help them to develop the mechanic and the vision together. So what we might do now is say, we're going to give you maybe a little bit more distance now, and you could maybe try the same shot again and hit the same speed into that pocket there.
Okay.
And then we can identify what's happening. Now, that's interesting. So, you attempted to strike the ball, and you were really trying. You weren't doing that for the camera, were you?
No.
You were really trying your best.
Yeah,
there,
I tried to hit it in the middle. Yeah.
Right. So the ball went to the right.
Okay.
Now, with this ball, it would have gone to the right, but maybe a very small millimeter.
So I would have putted it, right?
Maybe it pushes a little bit, especially on a new cloth.
Yeah.
And maybe with left-hand side, the white ball pushes a little bit to the right, and you miss the pot slightly to the left. This will clearly show you what happened.
Okay.
Now, you applied unintentional left-hand side, and that's an important thing to understand. When you apply side spin to a ball, let's say left, the ball will be deflected off the intended line of aim to the opposite side, to the side spin that you apply. So left-hand side spin pushes to the right, right-hand side spin pushes to the left.
Okay.
And interestingly, the lower you play on the ball with side,
the bigger the effect.
The bigger the deflection. The higher you play on the ball with side, the more it travels straight.
Okay.
So we could say to you then, Michael, now, and this is where we can start to retrain the visual cortex, right? Because you don't see with your eyes, you see with your brain.
Okay.
And you start to see by habit. And many players, for example, I work in professional golf, and some of my clients will be there playing golf, and they're convinced that they're setting up to a certain point on the fairway, but they're not. And they're not actually seeing the problem.
Yeah.
This is a new way to teach snooker, because what we've established now in neuroscience is that many players, like Mark Selby, for example, is aiming to miss the shot. And he doesn't realise he's aiming to miss the shot. And of course, when a player doesn't know they're aiming to miss, and they miss, they will always blame the technique.
Yeah, like Mark Selby did, right?
Right. Mark was looking for problems with his technique.
Okay.
But actually, he was striking that ball fantastic. But then when we tested him on the aiming of the shot, which is another 17-gram ball, but red, this will now check out your aiming, we could see that his aiming wasn't quite right.
Okay.
And that's what we're working on now.
All right.
So what happens then, Michael, if you tried to play that shot now, because you put a little bit of left, could you try to put 1 millimetre of what you think is a bit of right-hand side on?
All right. So
Could you
that
try that
should be
shot?
the center, yeah?
Yeah, a fraction of right-hand side, just a little touch. It's only like a millimetre, and the same speed now. Now, that's gone in the pocket.
That's nice.
Yeah. Now, a lot of players would say, a bit like Graham Dott, he was applying side spin, didn't realise it. He was also aiming incorrectly. This is 3 seasons ago. And I had to say to Graham, very similar, he was putting left-hand side spin. Could you put a little bit of right on now, Graham, and try the same shot? And he did, and it worked. But he said, under pressure, there's no way I can keep consciously trying to put a little bit of side on. But this is the interesting thing. The visual cortex relearns. So that little bit of right-hand side spin for you
becomes the center.
Right. What happens is, as your visual cortex starts to coordinate with your mechanics, you still keep saying to yourself a little bit of right. And at a certain point, you start to put right-hand side on.
All right.
And that means the brain relearns where middle is.
Okay.
And now you just say, hit the middle.
Okay.
Now, not every shot in
So that's the process, right?
It's a process. And it takes a little bit of repetition because we're creating neural connections. Every time we repeat something, the brain creates a neural connection. You repeat it again, and the dendrites start to attract other neural connections, and that's how you make a habit,
All right.
a cluster. So through repetition, you start to see it the right way, and that's basically the learning process. Not being aware of a problem, being aware of a problem, consciously changing it to correct it, and then making it a habit until it's correct without thinking.
Okay. In the subconscious, right?
Subconsciously.
All right. And what's about the red ball? You use
Okay.
you use both balls at the same time? Or not?
You can use both at the same time, but we can use it in different ways. So this is to identify where a player is aiming.
All right.
Okay? We can do a test maybe.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll let this ball settle again, and then we place it on the pink spot. Now, this one is with a standard white ball, so this is 143 gram, and it's only short distance. And the idea of this shot is to play middle, what we call the sweet spot,
Yeah.
to make that white go very straight.
Okay.
Medium speed, but the idea is to put the red in the pocket without touching one of the cushions.
Okay.
So it must go in the middle of the pocket.
All right. Let's
Try
try it
that.
then.
Just soft medium speed, not too much power. Okay, sweet spot area, and just a nice little pot. Now, Michael.
That wasn't so easy.
So you actually tried to pot the ball.
Yeah, I did.
Right. What's happening is this. Your visual cortex, right, is seeing slightly to the right of the intended contact point as the middle of the red.
Okay.
You're convinced that's the middle, but it isn't.
So it's actually a miracle that I can play snooker on
You'll
some
be-
certain level.
You'll be able to play a lot of shots, especially angle shots. This is straight.
Yeah.
Most shots in snooker are angle shots.
Yeah.
No, a small percentage are straight. But this is also telling you a little bit where your coordination is. You're a little bit to the right of the intended contact point. This is 17 grams, and again, it's a very tight tolerance. So
Okay.
this ball, if you hit it slightly off the center, will go wider
Okay.
than a 143 gram red will. So that one would have gone actually probably towards the jaw.
Okay.
This one showed you the problem.
So now to rewire, I have to aim a little bit on the left, right?
So we've got to now help you to rewire not only the striking, but now also the visual aiming on the object ball.
All right.
And the way we're going to do that is ask you, Michael, this time, you're going to be convinced that the red ball will slightly touch inside the right side of the pocket,
Okay.
right half of the pocket. Okay? So it looks a little bit like right half. Right. Now that was better.
That works.
Yes, that works. So you can imagine through repetition, the address position on the cue ball, okay, and the aiming on the red ball with repetition, you start to habitualize those two things.
Okay.
And like I said, they're the two big keys in any cue ball sport or cue sport. Striking where intended, you're playing with a little bit of unintentional left-hand side.
Yeah.
And you're also aiming slightly right of the target.
Okay.
Now, can you imagine if you could correct those two things? And it wouldn't take more than maybe a couple of months. You start to do those well by habit, your level will definitely go higher.
Okay.
Has to.
I think I'm going to invest in this.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for telling us what it's all about and how it covers the competence side of snooker.
Sure.
And what your insight is. And well, thank you and good luck.
It's my pleasure, Michael.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Już teraz zasubskrybuj kanał Eurosportu Polska, aby zagwarantować sobie prenumeratę Kuriera Snookerowego.